Aloha, everyone. I'm Lori Admiral. I'm the Director of Philanthropy for the Nature Conservancy's Hawaii chapter. Mahalo for joining our Conversation on Conservation webinar series today. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. You are muted to reduce background noise, and at any time, if you'd like to submit a question, please just utilize the chat button. I'll be monitoring it, and we'll take questions at the end. If we don't have time for all the questions, we'll share the information and when we share the recording, which we are recording this conversation. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Melissa Fisher, who is our Director of the Nature Conservancy's Kauai Forest Program. She'll be our guide as we virtually tour through the heart of Kauai's watershed. Melissa joined the Kauai program in 2008, served as the program's Deputy Director from 2011, and became the Program Director in 2017. She is responsible for overall project development and management of the Kauai program, overseeing a budget of approximately $1 million and a staff of 5. As director, Melissa facilitates and writes environmental assessments and management plans to build fences to protect watershed areas and native ecosystems. She works closely with public and private landowners, supporting TNC's role as the coordinator for the Kauai Watershed Alliance, and is currently the chair of the Hawaii Association of Watershed Partnerships. Melissa earned a bachelor's degree from Loyola Marymount University and a master's degree in business administration with a concentration on nonprofits from Marylhurst University. Melissa has made many contributions to TNC beyond our Kauai program in service of our entire Hawaii staff and also our global organizations, such as serving as the co-lead for our Women in Nature Employee Resource Group. She is a delight to work with, and we're really fortunate to have her on our team. And Melissa, I'm really looking forward to going through the forest with you today. So let's get started.
Great, thanks, Lori. First of all, everybody, welcome to my home, because during COVID, we're working from home, but we'll take you into the forest, into Kauai. Our statewide forest work focuses in on watershed protection, protecting the source of our fresh water for the benefit of everyone on each island. And because we know that everything is connected, the work that we do at the top of the mountain does have an effect on the streams, the rivers, and the reefs that we enjoy along the coast. So today I'm going to take you on a journey into the heart of Kauai's forest. But first, let's meet the team. On Kauai, we have a small team, and then each year we try and bring on 1 or 2 AmeriCorps interns so that we can hopefully give training to be that next generation of conservationists. TNC on Kauai is a little different because we don't actually own any land. So instead, we are the coordinator for the Kauai Watershed Alliance. And this alliance is made up of public and private landowners who mainly own lands in the areas of the island that capture most of the water. So as you see here on the map, mainly in the center of the island. Our current management plan for the alliance encompasses the projects at the center of the island that you see here. Then we work our way outwards. So, and you'll see in the little inset map, Canali Bog is also one of our management areas. So to take this journey, go ahead and grab your boots, grab your rain jacket, because you're gonna need it, and let's take a walk through the heart of Kauai together. To get there, we're gonna have to hop in a helicopter to take us from sea level, from that warm sunny day on the coast, up inland into that frequently cloud enshrouded and sometimes chilly center of the island. To hike to these spots would be a long drive up Waimea Canyon if you're familiar with Kauai, and then onto a 4-wheel drive road, then pretty much an all-day hike wading through small little rivers and streams into the wilderness where few people tend to go. The trade winds blow in from the ocean and bring with them moist air up to the summit of Waialeale at just over 5,000 feet in elevation. From here, the winds blow the clouds and they deposit the moisture onto the mosses and that blanket, that small and stunted native plants and trees that you see covering the windswept area of the Northeast Plateau. Frequently on trips here, the wind blows, and although it's not raining, you are wet, you are damp. Sometimes it's such a heavy mist that your hat is dripping with water, but it's not raining. We get dropped off by the helicopter, and our teams stay in the field for 3 to 4 days at a time. So as that helicopter takes off into the mist, we'll make our way to the work areas, to our project sites from that spot. One moment, you might be standing like this, surrounded in clouds, and then the next, the clouds break up, pull away, and you get views like what you see here, which is near one of our fence lines at the top of the mountain, and you're looking down into Blue Hole. Walking across these areas, you tend to have to choose your path carefully. There's many places that look solid, but are really far from it. There's some flat areas with small tufts of vegetation that as you walk across them, they easily give way underfoot. You can quickly sink into the mud, sometimes up as far as your knee, possibly losing a boot in that mud and leaning down and pulling it out, putting it back on and continuing on. So it has been known to happen. At the top of the mountain is Lake Waialeale, which really is that starting point for most of the water on Kauai. This amazing place is where the headwaters for the 7 major rivers that form and flow out to all sides of the island. You might hear running water as you walk along the areas at the Northeast Alakai. And one of my first trips there, we were supposed to land at the summit, but we couldn't because there were a lot of clouds and we couldn't fly in. So we were dropped off further down the fence line in order to hike in. So we got out of the helicopter and we started walking along the fence line, and our visibility was probably 5 or 6 feet in all directions. So we couldn't see a lot as we're walking. But I remember just hearing moving water, hearing small streams, rivulets, dripping water. And it wasn't until we were hiking out from the summit that day that the clouds parted, and one of those amazing days, and the sun comes out and it all warms up. You're peeling off your jackets and long sleeve shirts and drying out a little, and looking on the other side of the fence line, I see these little streams flowing, and it was just something that I will always remember from that trip. And so these are typical views of what you see, these native ferns and that are growing, and then that small stature plants that you see as well. So the plants that you're going to see at the very summit, are small and stunted. You will see smaller ohia. And so a lot of native plants thrive up there. So this is the Dubaudia Waialeale, named for that summit area. And then as you would traverse away from the summit down in elevation, you're going to start to get larger trees, denser ohia forests, and olapa, thick mossy ferns that cover the understories in these areas. At the summit, kolea and nene can be found. And then in the streams, as we move away from the summit, you'll see koloa duck here, or the native honey creepers, as pictured here, the iiwi, who has that curved beak that fits right into the flower. So that's why this area is an integral part of the work that the Nature Conservancy does for the benefit of the Kauai Watershed Alliance members. This is a place where the fresh water begins its journey to all parts of the island. So not only do the residents and visitors benefit from the care that we give this area, but the native plants and birds that are so important to the ability of this area to capture water benefit as well. And those muddy boots and gear that we saw earlier in the pictures, that really constitutes a typical day at the top of the mountain in the center of the island. So we'll move across the plateau, and the windswept area, gets to be more foresty, that more like what we know. And then we'll drop down into Wai Niha Valley. And there's a series of waterfalls that slowly drop about 15,000 feet, with the last plunge being a spectacular 500-foot drop to a pool at the back of Wai Niha, where Hinalele Falls, which then feeds the Wai Niha River and brings with it water that traverses through one of the longest valleys on the island. The trees at this elevation don't get pummeled by that intense wind or the constantness of that we saw on the plateau, but they're able to grow in stature and create a lacy canopy along the boulder-strewn sides of the Wai Niha River. The river then becomes our hiking trail, and it takes us from one work area to the next. And here you'll find those drier forest trees, the hame and lama, as well as the native ohia tree that tends to grow taller in these valley areas. You'll see native birds such as abapane, and then one of my favorites is the ever inquisitive elapayo, who frequently visits you at camp, or if you're sitting down for lunch. I always feel like they're like, hey, what do you got there? They're hopping around and chirping in trees as we eat lunch. So traversing this area requires boulder hopping, and boots affixed with spikes are definitely a help here as you hop from one mossy covered boulder to the other. And with the times that you're going to actually have to wade through shallower sections of the river. And sometimes, by the end of the day, after you've worked a long day, you're just going to walk through most of the river rather than trying to stay dry as you did at the beginning of the day. Here we meet up with our field team working to remove invasive weeds at one of our project areas. And this, you'll find as well, this native mint. And so you're working all day, but you'll come across these amazing native plants. And this is the native mint, but it's different because it doesn't actually smell like mint, but it is of the mint family. So the steep valley walls in Wai Niha will shorten the daylight hours, and evenings quickly come and cool down. But you can find pools at the end of the day to take a refreshing dip. I'm, not much for cold water, so I tend to sit on the side and cool my feet and soak them at the end of the day before heading back to camp or before everybody makes dinner together. But we're going to take the river and we're going to head out to a completely different area. So this is Canali Bog, one of our preserves that is a little more accessible. It's nestled into the back of Kalaheo, and it's at the base of Mount Kahili. So it's hidden because it's not seen from the road. You wouldn't really know it was there. The road is about 3 miles away. The elevation is 2,100 feet, and it's the last intact low elevation bog really left thriving in the state. So the broad, bold-shaped amphitheater, it allows you to take in the serene setting, and you can kind of forget that people are rushing by on the highway, and it's not that far away. Typically, white-tailed tropic birds will soar overhead. And last fall, when we were driving up, we believe we saw a Hawaiian owl, the pueo, fly by in the trees as we were going up a very muddy four-wheel drive trail. And in the bog, it helps to wear snowshoes. So you see on the picture on the left, affixing our shoes with what we call snowshoes, even though there's no snow, of course, but it helps to distribute weight so you don't crush the plants as we walk through these areas, and we don't crush those amazing plants that are growing. This is the native Lobelia, and most times of the year you'll see it simply with that stalk and that puff of green around the top. But if you're lucky to be able to visit the bog in the early fall, you'll see the flowers, and these beautiful, almost purpley white flowers pop out and are just stunning to see. This is one of my favorite plants. It's a small carnivorous plant, similar to the Venus flytrap, if you're familiar with that. It's a sundew, or mikinalo, and it draws in and captures those unsuspecting flies. And I looked up the Hawaiian translation of this, and it literally means to suck flies. So I thought, well, perfect, But when you're in the bog, you don't immediately notice these, even though they're bright colored, and you see that sort of fluorescent yellow and hot pink. They're about the size of my finger, and so they're quite small, but you look down and you notice them, and then after you notice that first one, you see them everywhere. So they're just one of my favorites to see up there. And then of course we have the native ohia as well. But here in the bog, because it's similar to, they grow small in stature. And, at the top of the mountain, we have the windswept areas that, pummel the trees, and that's why they're shorter. But here in the bog is because they can't get a lot of root purchase. So they don't quite grow as tall, but they definitely flourish. And right next to that is a fern. It's the Wai Viole, the rat's foot fern. And to me, it just reminds me of that small little Christmas tree branch. And, they thrive as well in the bog system. The clear water that flows gently under the fence that we have surrounding this area definitely is a testament to the condition of the bog and protecting it from the animals that move through adjacent areas. So I've shown you a lot of the beautiful views, but to really give you an idea of the difference that our work makes in these areas, I thought we'd show you a few comparisons. And so this is within the East Alakai fence, one of the areas at the top of the mountain. So the difference between 2011 and 2019, you can see the native ferns filling in, the trees, where the animals, the goats used to browse on the bark, it's getting more mossy. There's more vegetation down low, and then the trees are really branching out. And this is also inside our East Alakai fence, but at the Kauai stream. And so from 2012 to 2019, it also shows an increase in those ferns that would have been eaten by the pigs moving through the area. And then this photo, to me, is really telling because it's one of our monitoring plots. And you see the monitoring stick in 2014. And then moving 2016, yeah, you still see the stick, but by 2018, you wouldn't see it unless you knew it was there. So with that, And before you take off your raincoat, I wanted to leave you with this last view of the forest. Have you breathe in the moist air and remember our journey together. And that together we can not only protect the source of Kauai's fresh water, but we can protect the amazing plants and animals that keep this forest healthy. And with you, we can continue to protect the heart of Kauai. And with that, we will take questions.
Mahalo, Melissa. Before we do that, we're going to open up a quick poll. So let me throw it up on the screen here. All right. Which area would you like to spend the day in? Would you like to get wet by mist, wind, and rain at the top of the mountain in your boots? Would you like to wear spiked boots and go boulder hopping along the river? Snowshoes, exploring wide open amphitheater of carnivorous plants, or house slippers, enjoying a virtual tour from the comfort of your home? We'll give everybody just a few minutes to hear. Everybody's voting pretty quickly. Almost there. Almost there. Okay, let's see what you decided. I think everybody wants to get in their boots, Melissa.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, well, let me know when you're ready.
So now we can take some questions. Let me check the chat and see what we've got. Okay, this is a good one. Why is the dog there? Is it just for fun, or does he have a purpose?
Yeah, well, this is Taco, spelled T-A-K-O, and Taco belongs to our field coordinator, Nikolai Barca. In the office, Taco usually comes whenever Nick's in the office, and Taco's purpose is to just be fun. But out in the forest, Taco is great at making sure that our fences are intact and that no animals have gotten in. She has a great nose.
And Melissa, is he wearing a radio?
Yes, actually, it's a radio collar so that Nick can track her on a GPS unit so that we can know where she's gone and also make sure that we know where she is so she doesn't get lost. But typically Nick stays pretty close to her and then figures out where she's going, but she always likes to come back to camp and, you know, have dinner. So.
What are some of the main invasive species that you're battling in the native forest?
So the main invasive species, the weeds that we are working on are Clidemia. We have strawberry guava, which, you know, in the lowland areas, everybody wants to make jam out of them, and, you know, it makes a great jam, but up in the forest, it tends to take over, and the invasive species out-compete the native plants. So they tend to fill in if there was a spot of erosion. So strawberry guava, kahili ginger, which is quite a beautiful ginger, but it spreads rapidly and quickly through the forest, different from the native white ginger.
Melissa, what are your biggest challenges?
Well, the biggest challenges that I face, you know, definitely are fundraising for sure. We know that we're working to protect the drinking water, the fresh water supply on the island, but there are many worthy causes, and it can be difficult for both public and private entities to choose which one to help. So we understand that. But I'm hoping that by sharing these stories, we can, you know, bring out these amazing stories that are actually hidden in the forest to give a better understanding of why our work is so important. And then, as everybody saw, weather is definitely one of our challenges. You know, it's a big factor. And typically when our field teams go out in the forest, they're always ready with an alternative plan. So if we can't get to the Northeast Alakai, well, we might be able to get down into Wai Niha. So we plan a couple trips in order to best utilize our time and keep our work moving forward.
Melissa, are there opportunities to permanently protect some of the privately held lands?
So the Kauai Watershed Alliance is an amazing group. They're part of the Hawaii Association of Watershed Partnerships, and the Alliance has the public and private landowners in it. And so that's what the private landowners are doing. You know, they are protecting these areas through agreements with the Nature Conservancy as the coordinator for the Alliance, so that we can go in and protect the drinking water supply. So they really understand the need to do this work, and they are able to set aside this land for that, and really to benefit all generations, all future generations on Kauai.
Have you noticed an increase in the native bird population within the fenced area?
You know, we aren't ourselves tracking the bird populations within the current fenced areas. There's the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Plan that we work closely with. So what I like to envision in my head is how all of the partnerships work side by side. So the work that we do definitely helps to keep that habitat healthy for the birds. And I know the forest bird teams do struggle a bit because of habitat degradation, but also mosquitoes. So mosquitoes are a big factor for the forest birds. But we work hand in hand. So the last fence that was built in the Halihaha unit is major forest bird habitat. And when we finished the fence, we worked with the forest bird team, one, to align the fence so that we didn't go through on nesting season, and we kept certain areas that we didn't traverse through, or, you know, do our invasive weed work or animal work to remove the animals and kind of have them exit through the fence. So it's definitely something that we consider, but it's not our primary mission to protect the fresh water.
How about a personal question? What's the favorite part of your job?
Favorite part of my job, I think, is because I tend to be in the office quite a bit, writing grants and reports and, you know, helping link everything up so that the team can do their work in the forest. I love when they come out of the forest and we talk about the trip and what they have seen and what's happened during that trip. And so it's kind of digging deeper into the field work as well as the stories. And this one video that I came across the other day, just it made me chuckle because it was in Wai Niha, where, you know, we have all the boulders and the water flowing, and it was of this little whirlpool just happened. And, you know, I had not seen anything like it. Nick did the video and he hadn't seen anything like it, but it was this little whirlpool eddy just against this rock swirling and swirling and kind of, you know, kind of, I hate to say it, but made that like whooshing noise, like in a toilet bowl. And it's just like these phenomenal things that show up in the photos from the trip. So that's always fun. And we like to take these stories or these interesting photos and video clips and link them into our newsletter. So we have a quarterly newsletter where we share different things that we come across that people might not know is happening in the forest, and kind of share that knowledge along.
Do you do any outplanting? And if you do, what are the species that you outplant?
Yeah, our team, because we're so small, we're focused in on removing the invasives. And then again, our partners are focused in on doing outplanting. And so it would depend on the area, but there's definitely outplanting done by the state, who's one of our partners and a Kauai Watershed Alliance member, as well as other smaller conservation organizations such as Kauai Resource Conservation Program. So fortunately, we don't have quite the team to do outplanting, but we definitely set the stage so it can happen. We worked with National Tropical Botanical Garden in Canali Bog, and we were able to work with them to say, okay, where do you want to plant? And we then went there and did the weed control work so that they could go in and plant the native species back into the bog. So definitely partnerships are, part of how we work here on Kauai.
Well, you rolled right into the next question. How do you partner with the National Tropical Botanical Garden? And maybe you could talk a little bit about partnerships.
Yeah, so partnerships are a key, definitely, to what we do. And in everything that we do. And to me, it's a puzzle here on Kauai. Every entity has their has their purpose, and we work together so that, like what I just spoke about with the forest bird team or NTBG, National Tropical Botanical Garden, each of us plays our role in keeping that ecosystem healthy, keeping that forest healthy, keeping that bog healthy. And so it's a really great collaboration in that. And then as well as the Kauai Watershed Alliance, with the Alliance members, the public and private landowners that we work closely with. So it's definitely a collaboration all around, and figuring out how we can work together.
Well, you've already got some folks interested in those whirlpool videos, so you might get prepared to share those. And what is your vision for the next 5 or 10 years? Well, where do you see Kauai in conservation?
So with the Kauai Watershed Alliance Management Plan, out of all the partner acres, the 144,000 acres, we're focused in on 25,000 acres at the very center of Kauai. It's like we did a revisit to the management plan in 2012, and we were very ambitious. We were like, okay, great, well, get this fence in, get that fence in, we can do this. And we thought, okay, the next 10 years, yeah, we can protect all these areas, but really to get all the pieces in place, it takes a little bit longer than that. So the next 5 to 10 years would be the fulfillment of that management plan, and to really protect the core of Kauai. And once we get all of that protected, that 25,000 acres, you never walk away completely. You always have to maintain. So we're always doing fence checks. We're always repairing. We figure a fence has about a 20-year life, and then we'll need to go back and most likely replace it at 20 to 25 years. So you can never fully let go. But, after that, it's like, how can we then further protect the rest of the island? How can we move down into those next areas and protect that, so that this will further protect the homes, the livelihoods, and the natural resources for all the future generations. So the vision is big. There's a lot to do, but I feel like we have a really amazing team, not only on Kauai, but statewide, that we can all work together and make these visions happen.
Okay, I think we'll do one more.
Okay.
This is going to be a test for you.
Uh-oh.
What are the 7 major rivers referenced, and where do they flow?
Oh, I was afraid that was going to happen. So, so there's Wai Niha, Waimea, Kauai, Hanalei. There's a couple forks, and so yeah, I'm gonna have to get back to you on this. It's ones that we don't necessarily. The Wailua. I'm trying to go around the island here, so yeah, I'll have to get my map out. I think that was 5 or 6, so I think I'm missing one, but we'll go through that in our next newsletter. So sign up for our newsletter. How about that?
Well, how about one more?
Okay.
How has climate change impacted the work? And have you witnessed significant alterations in weather patterns or foliage growth when you're out in the field?
Yeah, climate change is definitely a factor for us. And, you know, what they're saying are that, you know, the dry side is going to get drier, the wet side will get wetter, but in the rain events will be shorter. So there's definitely patterns with wind shiftings and things. We aren't necessarily noticing a lot where we currently work in those upper areas, but what our work will do is our work will create like that healthy forest, because we have a lot of unknowns that hit, you know, so if we have a forest in the best condition possible, it will be able to weather those next unknowns. So an unknown, if anybody's heard of rapid ohia death, that really full force hit Hawaii Island and now is being found on Kauai as well as some of the other islands. So rapid ohia death affects ohia trees, and it's a fungus and it kills the tree. And not to go into too much detail on that, but what a tree get infected by this fungus when it's wounded. And how do trees get wounded? Trees get wounded through natural events such as wind, or if somebody, you know, stepped over a root and with spikes and damaged the root. But they get infected also by animals. So browsing or digging at the roots of ohia trees. And so the work that we do to fence out these animals really will help protect our forests at the top of the mountain. And so by protecting the forest from these browsing animals, you know, we are hoping, really hoping, touch wood, that, you know, this is going to help protect our ohia forests as well on Kauai, because our main ohia forests are further up in the mountains. So keeping that forest healthy, keeping that forest thriving will help to protect against these unknowns that we can't anticipate. So, you know, climate change is a big unknown in and of itself. And we hope that, you know, we can help find those solutions to keep the forest healthy, to keep it thriving, to help prevent that erosion that comes downstream and help to capture the water, you know, for freshwater security for everyone on the island, both here and the other islands.
Thanks so much, Melissa. I think we've gone through, I think, everybody's questions. We had a lot of good ones today. Thanks so much for taking the time to join our conversation on conservation today, and we hope you've learned a lot about our watershed conservation work that Melissa and her team do on Kauai. Healthy watersheds across the island are critical to our mission. If you're interested in supporting our efforts, please respond to the email that we'll send you with the recording of this webinar. We'll also send you a little bit more information about Kauai Maybe we'll even get that whirlpool video in there, or we'll see what we've got. But we'll be sharing a bit more with you, and we welcome your feedback or your questions. Mahalo again for joining us, and thank you for your dedicated support of the Nature Conservancy. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon or evening. Aloha.
Thank you.